The deck's been shuffled, the stakes are high, and MINI has just dealt its latest hand. Introducing the all-new MINI Aceman, the new ace in the MINI's electric pack. But this ace isn't just playing by the old rules. No, it's bringing some new tricks to the table.
An electric crossover? I mean, what's next? A car that can deal itself?
Oh, I'm not just an ace. I'm the whole deck, buddy. How about I show you some of my MINI tricks? That's right, with my ambient lighting, OLED screen, DJ turntable, and some amazing MINI experience modes, I'm all about the good vibes.
Okay, Aceman, that's cool. But do you have any practical tricks for me?
Oh, you mean like fitting into tight spaces? Check. Or packing all your luggage without breaking a sweat? Double check.
Okay, that's cool. But what else can you do?
Well, there may be other minis that run on zero emissions, but I'm the only one with an ace up my sleeve. Bet you didn't see that coming.
No, I did not.
The new MINI Aceman. The new ace that's got a full house of surprises. Now who's dealing next?
You're watching BMW Vlog, and this is the all-new and all-electric MINI Aceman crossover. In this video, we're gonna be talking about the driving experience of the car in and outside the city. Of course, we're gonna go for a dynamic ride on some of these curvy roads around Copenhagen. And then, of course, we're gonna talk about specs, feature, design, and a lot more. So don't go anywhere. So how does it drive? It's fast. Despite showing 7.1 seconds from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour on paper, the new Aceman absolutely feels faster. It packs 215 horsepower and 330 Newton meters of torque, which of course comes instantly. It delivers the power only to the front wheels. It does not have an all-wheel drive option like the MINI Countryman all-electric. And it drives different than the MINI Countryman because it starts with a platform. The J05 Aceman, it's built on the same EV-first platform as the J01 Cooper all-electric. Therefore, it comes with several advantages. One of them is, of course, efficiency, and we're going to talk about that in a lot more detail, but also with better packaging and better space inside. Let's talk a little bit more about the daily driving aspect of this new Aceman. As you can see, I'm on a highway near Copenhagen. I'm driving about 100 kilometers per hour, 60 miles per hour. And so this gives me a chance to talk a little bit more about how the car feels in its normal setting. Of course, it's an electric car, so if you want to overtake or simply take off, this car will absolutely deliver on that. But it's not about that. It's about the comfort of a daily driver. And as you'd expect, the Aceman, it's a really, really good daily driver. Not only that it's quite spacious inside, but it's quite comfortable to drive over long distances. I was chatting earlier with a MINI engineer, and he was telling me that in their development process, they wanted to achieve a good balance for the car on the highway. And what do they mean by that? Well, essentially, instead of having a very sporty, very twitchy steering that you would get at high speeds while cornering, they wanted to have this nice and balanced, yet fairly heavy steering when you drive at 100 kilometers per hour in a straight line. And that's exactly how the car feels. The steering, it's not too comfortable, but it's also not too sporty. So essentially, for a daily driver, this is exactly the right balance that you want in your car. As you might be able to hear, or not hear at all, it's the fact that the car is really nicely insulated from the outside. There isn't a lot of cabin noise, which makes daily driving even more comfortable, and there isn't a lot of tire noise either, despite the fact that I'm running on 19-inch tires. In many ways, this is a grown-up version of the Cooper Electric rather than a downsized MINI Countryman. And the driving experience absolutely reflects that. You might be inclined to think that this car drives closer to the Countryman than to the Cooper, but you'd be wrong. It's really just an enlarged Cooper all-electric. Speaking of size, it measures 160.2 inches in length, 68.9 inches in width, and it's about 59 inches tall. In comparison, the Countryman is 13 inches longer and 4 inches taller. Now, if you look at the R60 generation Countryman, you might notice that it's pretty similar in size to this new Aceman. Just like all the new Minis, this Aceman comes with 8 different MINI experience modes. You've seen it before, and they range from a personal mode to a vivid mode, to a core mode, to a go-kart mode, and a lot more. Of course, my favorite is still the go-kart mode, not only because it looks cool, but also because the car becomes a lot sharper. As I mentioned in my previous Mini Countryman JCW all-electric, it's my preferred mode because it brings the car a lot closer to the go-kart feeling of the iconic Minis. You can feel the car becoming a lot sharper almost instantly. The suspension stiffens up quite a bit. The steering response, it's also a lot better in this mode. And even the overall power delivery, it's a little bit more aggressive with the go-kart mode. Even though it shares the same platform with the Mini Cooper all-electric, the driving experience can't be any different. And that's by design, because Mini didn't want to make this Aceman feel and drive like a Cooper. They wanted to have its own character. So of course there were a lot of changes done compared to the Cooper. Initially, they started with the base Cooper settings. But after some extensive testing, the engineers realized that they really wanted to give this Aceman its own identity. They wanted to move the Aceman as far as possible from the Cooper as far as the sporty settings without losing any comfort, because once again, this is a daily driver, even more compared to the Mini Cooper all-electric. So the engineering team worked quite a bit on the suspension settings of the Aceman. It has new dampers and new bushings, which give the car an absolutely completely different driving experience on curvy roads and also in city driving. What I noticed immediately is the fact that the car has a little bit more travel in the suspension. It rebounds a little bit different than on the Cooper, and of course, completely different than on the Countryman. The suspension, it's not as aggressive as in the Cooper, even in the go-kart mode. You can tell that this car was meant to be more of a daily driver, a crossover type of car, than a hot hatch like the Cooper electric. The suspension absorbs the shocks quite nicely, even on imperfect roads, and that's mostly because of the additional travel in the dampers. What I've also learned from the engineers was the fact that initially, the Mini Aceman had a little bit too much oversteering in the rear, so they decided to change that driving behavior. A bushing was changed to give the Aceman a little bit more stability, especially at high speeds. Even though the steering rack is the same as in the Mini Cooper all-electric, the softer tuning, it's completely different. Once again, this is a heavier car, it's a bigger car than the Cooper all-electric, so it should drive differently. In city driving, the steering forces are quite low for more comfort. But if you drive faster and a little bit more dynamic, you will notice the higher forces in the steering. On the highway, you'll get a good center-on feeling, but if you're cornering the car, you will notice there will be a little bit twitchier in the steering, and you'll get a little bit more feedback from the front wheels. As you can see, now I'm hitting some of these curvy roads, and I can push the car a little bit more. There is a little bit of torque steering when you floor the pedal. Of course, you still need to have some torque steering at the front because you want to get some additional feedback from the front wheels. Just to give you an example of the torque steering, coming to a standstill, and now I'm gonna floor that pedal. Here we go. Not much, just a little bit of torque steering, enough to kind of know what's happening with the front wheels. Straight line performance, it's impressive. As you can see here, the car just takes off. When it comes to body roll, there isn't too much in this car. Of course, it sits a little bit higher than the Cooper all-electric, but I can tell there is a lot less body roll than in the Countryman, for example. And of course, that's to be expected. It's not only lighter, but it's also smaller in size than the Countryman. The brake regeneration system in the Aceman, it's exactly the same as you'd find in the Cooper. If you go to the drivetrain and chassis settings, you will be able to change the energy recuperation. For example, you can have an adaptive mode, and you will let the car decide the best brake regeneration for you, or you can pick in between a low, moderate, and high setting. As you can see, I got a nice stretch of roads right here. They're not perfect roads, there is a lot of bounciness happening, but the suspension does a very, very good job keeping the car planted on the road. You can see a little bit of torque steering when you floor the car, then it turns in nicely. Not much body roll, very, very composed. Of course, I'm in the go-kart mode, so that will stiffen up the car quite a bit. So after quite a lot of driving today, maybe it's time to pull over, have a coffee, and talk about the design of the new MINI Aceman.
Design-wise, the MINI Aceman, it's different than the Countryman and the Cooper, and that starts with the headlights. As you can see right here, it's got a different type of design, but of course, it's also customizable as on the other cars. If you go inside the car, you can customize the graphics right there. The overall front fascia, it does resemble the new Mini family. It's cleaner than before, it sits quite upright, but if you look from the side, you will notice compared to the Countryman that it's got shorter overhangs. So from that perspective, the Aceman actually looks a lot closer to the original Mini if you want. Another big difference on the side you'll notice, it's the fact that it still uses this black cladding around the wheels. Those are gone in the Mini Cooper and also in the Mini Countryman. The same theme continues right here with this rocker panel, once again made out of this black plastic, which gives it a really nice contrast, especially with this red. Other than that, it's your typical minimalistic Mini design that you've seen on the Cooper and the Countryman. Very clean shapes on the side, of course, flush door handles. If you look at the roofline, a lot more crossover-ish than on the Countryman, and definitely a lot more crossover-ish than the Cooper. Now, if you go to the back, of course, you're gonna see the iconic Union Jack taillights. Once again, customizable, just like the headlights. Beautiful design, nicely integrated into the shoulders of this Aceman. It's a pipeless design, of course, because it's all electric. At the top, you gotta see this really nice hood right here, which of course helps quite a bit with aerodynamics. All right, let me show you the cargo space in the car. Of course, it's not a very scientific test, but you can see I have a backpack here and a few other accessories that I had with me today to film. Overall, of course, you can fit maybe a large bag or two small carry-ons, not huge space, 300 liters, as I said a little bit earlier today. If you do fold down the seats, you're getting about 1,000 liters, which is quite decent. Once again, it's not a Countryman, it's not a Cooper, it's in between, and that's reflected in the cargo space as well. Design, it's always subjective, but if I were to pick in between the design of the new Cooper, the Countryman, and now the Aceman, I would say this is my favorite. With that being said, let's hop inside and take a look at the interior design now. So interior design, if you look at the car, you will notice that it's a lot closer in design to the Cooper than to the Countryman, and that's to be expected because the Cooper and the Aceman, they share the same platform. You will notice this especially right here in the center console because you don't have the transmission tunnel in the Countryman. This whole area has been redesigned. It's quite spacious. It's got wireless charging right there. It's got a different angle than you will see in the Countryman, of course. Slimmer armrest right there. This area, it's also very similar to the Cooper. Same goes for the seats, same design as in the Cooper with the Vaseline fabric on it, which is 100% recyclable. If you look at the dashboard, it also resembles the Cooper quite a bit, with the difference that you're getting this strap right behind the steering wheel compared to the strap that you might see on that side in the Cooper and the Countryman. Same OLED screen, of course, no surprise there. It's powered by operating system 9. What I like about this version is that it's a little bit snappier than in the past. I had an issue the first time that I saw the Countryman because it was quite laggy, but right now it's actually quite responsive. As you can see, you can go fairly quickly from one screen to another, if not instant. So that's a huge improvement in the software update they've delivered to this car. I'm assuming it's going to be rolled out to all the other Minis if it has not been already. I enjoy this screen because it's different. It's not your typical tablet on top of the dashboard, which I don't think it will actually fit in this car. It will look quite weird considering how small the interior really is. So the one thing worth mentioning, which is a nice tidbit, is the fact that the Mini has the first round OLED display in the industry. Another change that you will notice in the car, it's also in the door. You'll notice that this area right here, it's been a little bit redesigned compared to the Cooper. And of course, it looks completely different than on the Countryman. Steering, nice and beefy. Of course, we've seen it in other Minis as well. No surprise there. You're also getting a strap in the middle too, which looks quite cool, and I believe you can customize this as well. Space-wise, you can see I'm sitting comfortably here, and we're gonna go in the back seat in a second to show you how much room you will have if I were to maintain this driving position. Overall, it's the interior that you expected from Mini. I mean, we've seen it in the Countryman, we've seen it in the Cooper. Of course, a lot of the materials and a lot of the design has transferred over to the Aceman. So absolutely no surprise there. I guess one complaint here that I have, it's really around the quality of the materials. I've talked about this in some BMW products as well. I feel like there is a little bit too much plastic in cars today, and this applies to the MINI Aceman as well. You can see them right here. You know, you have this matte black right there, and then a little bit more plastic there. Even though a lot of people don't like the fabric on the dashboard, I actually do like it. I asked BMW and MINI how easy it is to actually clean this fabric, and I was told that they've done a lot of durability testing and cleaning testing and all of that. So with that being said, let's hop in the back seat and let's see how much room I have in there with the seat adjusted to my driving position. All right, so let's check out the interior space in the car. A little bit tight to get inside. Close the door. Okay, that's nice handle. Okay, so a little bit tight in here, right? Clearly more space in the Cooper, less space than in the Countryman, but let's focus on this one. It doesn't have the scoops they usually see in BMW seats where you can actually put your knees in there a little bit more. Of course, it's a soft material, so you can definitely push this if you want to. Overall, decent space, but as you can see, if you travel with two other people in here, it's gonna be tight. I mean, it's gonna be really tight. So this is definitely a 2+2 type of car. If you have a small child in the middle, of course you can do this, but then you might need a car seat, so that's gonna ruin the whole thing. Headroom, not so much really. I mean, it's got a nice scoop in here. I mean, I guess it was designed that way to give a little bit more headroom. You have maybe, you know, 4 fingers, maybe 4 or 5 centimeters, but nonetheless, it's enough for someone my height. If you're a little bit taller than this, it might be an issue. Side room, I guess decent, because it's got this scoop in here as well in the door, so you can rest your arm in there. So that's gonna give you more lateral room, something that we've seen in other MINI products as well. The rear bench doesn't slide out, doesn't adjust the angle or any of that, so you're sitting fairly upright. You have this headrest behind me. If you lower it down, it's going to take a little bit more of the space in the back. I actually had this lowered like right there, and I had to lift it up in order to get more back room there. So once again, it's got decent space inside. It's exactly what you expect. Is it perfect for long road trips? Probably not. I mean, it's gonna be tight in here. Even if you ride with one more person at some point, you might be rubbing shoulders a little bit too much. So with that being said, let's go behind the wheel one more time and continue our drive.
So for example, this MINI Aceman SC, it's now priced at nearly $39,000 before options and packages. Now let's talk about the range and the efficiency of the Aceman SE. The top Aceman model comes with a battery pack of 54.2 kilowatts hour with a net capacity of 49.2 kilowatts hours. That gives the Aceman SE a range of 406 kilometers on the WLTP, or around 252 miles. Compared to the base Aceman model, which gets a lower charging capacity, the Aceman SE can charge the car up to 95 kilowatts per hour. That's enough to charge the battery from 10 to 80% in about 30 minutes. What's also quite interesting is the fact that despite being larger and heavier, the MINI Aceman seems to be a little bit more efficient, at least on paper, than the Cooper all-electric. So I'd be driving about 2 hours and 13 minutes, nearly 120 kilometers, and the efficiency right now, it's rated 9.9 kilowatts hour. As you can see, the battery, it's got a little bit more than half left in it, and it's showing me a projected range left of about 155 kilometers. Naturally, this is a little bit shorter than the projected 406 kilometers on a WLTP cycle, which is achieved under perfect driving conditions. And that's not something that I did today because I pushed this car quite hard. Let's talk about the comfort of the seats. I'm a tall guy, 6'2", 6'3", and I weigh about 80-something kilograms. So even though I've been driving for quite some time today, a few hours, a couple of 100 kilometers, they're still very comfortable. They are not too aggressive in design, yet they do hug you nicely, especially when you want to corner the car. MINI positions their cars as premium products, so this new Aceman comes with a few additional comfort features. On the driver's side, you're getting a massaging seat, and of course, you can spec both these seats with a heated option. Copenhagen is beautiful, but it's got a lot of traffic also. It's a combination of cars and bicycles. But that's okay because I wanted to see what it feels like driving the Aceman in traffic. There is no secret that I absolutely enjoy driving an electrified car in rush hour. It makes changing lanes a little bit faster. stop and go traffic, it's also a little bit easier because you can accelerate a lot quicker to catch the next green light. And overall, it's just more of a serene and calm ride than a combustion-powered car. When it comes to the Aceman, it's got a really good turn radius. So even though I missed a few streets where I was supposed to go, a few exits, it was quite easy to maneuver this car, even on those narrow European roads. So I had a chance to drive in rush hour, 3 hours and 45 minutes, 183 kilometers, 13.6 kilowatts hour. Range left, 113 kilometers. Overall, the MINI Aceman, it's a very, very enjoyable car and a fantastic daily driver. And that brings me to the next point. MINI offers 3 all-electric variants: the Cooper, the Aceman, and of course the Countryman. Unfortunately, if you live in the US like I do, you only have one option, the Countryman. And that's a little bit unfortunate because honestly, I've been looking for a replacement for my i3 for quite some time. And at this point, there is nothing in the US lineup to fill that void. I've always enjoyed my i3s. I've had 4 of them, and for a very, very long time, I was looking for a replacement for that car. The reasons why I love the i3 was mostly because of its size. It was perfect for a city like Chicago, yet at the same time, it was quite functional and quite spacious. And the Aceman feels quite similar to me. Now, why isn't MINI bringing the Aceman and the Cooper all-electric to the US? That has to do mostly with the import tax. As you know, the US tax is quite a bit all the cars made in China because the Cooper and the Aceman are built in China. That goes for the European Union as well. Even though you can buy this car in Europe and of course in Germany as well, you are paying, or at least BMW is paying for now, quite a bit of tariffs on the car. So by now you might be wondering, how does the car compare to the Cooper Electric, but also to the MINI Countryman all-electric? And even though it might sound like a cliche, it does fit in the middle of the two, as expected, as intended. In some ways, especially when going faster and cornering and all of that, it feels a little bit closer to the Cooper, and that's normal. But in other ways, especially when you drive in the city or you're doing more relaxed driving, it does have a little bit of the character of the Countryman. Of course, they're completely different platforms, as I've said already, but I guess the similarities really come from the electric drivetrain, the motors, the battery, and especially the go-kart driving experience. So which one would I pick if I had a choice? Well, if I were to live in Europe, where they sell all these 3 cars, then I would absolutely go for the Aceman, and I'll tell you why. One, because I'm not trading too much by going from the Cooper to the Aceman in terms of driving dynamics. Then on the second hand, I'm getting a lot more interior space and absolutely the practicality of a crossover. Now, when it comes to the Countryman all-electric, which is a fantastic product, by the way, that car, it's a little bit more grown up, a little bit more mature. It reminds me more of a classic SUV than a mini crossover, for example. So if you have a larger family, if you need to haul more things with you, then the Countryman, it's also a viable option. But using it as a daily driver, I would absolutely still pick the Aceman. Now, let's say that you're a Mini purist and you still enjoy that classic go-kart feel, then of course you might be more inclined to go towards the Cooper Electric just because it retains that DNA a little bit better. In the end, the choice, it's really yours. It just comes down to your personal choice because the range when it comes to the 2 cars, it's quite comparable. So if you value interior space, if you value cargo space a little bit more, then of course the Aceman will be the right choice for you. But let me know in the comments below, which one would you take? Would you take the Cooper Electric, the Aceman, or the Countryman? Because I'm really curious to find out your opinion on the car.